Yeah. Have a seat, friends. Good morning. Bear with my weak voice today. It's a great morning for Pierre to preach. My name is Bill, and I get to be the pastor of College Church, and great to see all your faces. Great to see you greeting one another, lifting up holy hands. It's great to be in the house of the Lord together this morning. If this is your first time, we especially want to welcome you, and we hope that God's face shines on you today as we spend time in His presence. There's a black pad at the end of your row. If you haven't picked that up yet, go ahead and do so now. Let us know you're here. Send it on down. And if there's a way that we could be in touch with you this week to follow up with you about a need that you have or a question that you have, go ahead and pull out that welcome card. Or if we could be praying for you this week, pull out the prayer card, and you can drop those in the plates as they're passed later on, or bring them over to the Welcome Center before you leave. So we have a new bulletin. I dare you to try to lose this thing. You know, when they first came out with the Sears catalog, they made it smaller than everything else so that it would have to be on the top of the pile, so that you'd have to see it all the time. Well, good luck losing this thing. You stick it in anything and it sticks out like 4 inches. And it's kind of a nudge to keep the conversation going and to keep talking with God about what we're hearing and experiencing of Him together. So commend that to you. There's a lot going on. If you want to know about the things that are happening, the best way to do that is to sign up for the Pulse. And there's an invitation to do that on the back. The Pulse is our weekly email that goes out every Thursday, and we'd love to keep you looped in. You can also scan the QR code to visit our events page, which is always up to date. If you need help scanning a QR code, just ask a young person. They'd love to help you. We're having a Rule of Life workshop 2 weeks from today on April 26th after church. We are really passionate about following Jesus and building a life with Him at the center. And this Rule of Life workshop is an opportunity to listen to and discern His voice together. What is God's invitation to me in this season of my life? How does He want me to grow? How does He want me to become more like Jesus? During this workshop, we're going to help you identify and take one step to keep Jesus at the center of your life and to become more like Him. We offered this exact same workshop back in January, so if you went to that one, you don't have to come back to this one. It's the same stuff. But it was a powerful experience for me. I heard God say things to me that He'd probably been trying to communicate to me for a long time. I just needed to listen and ask the right questions. But I walked away from that time with a lot of clarity around ways that I had been over-functioning. And I was brought back in touch with God's love for me and my loved ones and His sovereignty. So highly recommend this workshop. It's free. Lunch is potluck, so you can bring something to share. There's free childcare, so if that's been an obstacle in the past, we hope that you'll come and participate this time around. And you can register at the connections table in the back before you leave, or on our website, or by following the QR code. In less exciting news, the elders have a collection of policies and papers that guide us as we shepherd and care for the congregation. And one of our policies has to do with divorce. And we realized not too long ago that our policy didn't speak to the issue of abuse or neglect. And so we decided to revise it. And we spent months thinking about, theological questions and pastoral questions and how to best respond to a known instance of abuse or neglect. And so our new policy reflects that. Next Sunday, there will be an open forum. And the purpose isn't to vote on this thing or debate it or anything like that, but rather to ask questions, talk about how we can prevent such things and recognize and respond to them better, and to pray for marriages and relationships in the church. You can access the revised policy from your bulletin. Or from the Pulse, and I believe there are some printed copies in the back as well. All right, in just a moment, one of our gospel partners is going to come and share with us. This individual serves in a sensitive part of the world, and so to protect our partner and his work, we're going to drop the audio and the video on the live stream just for this part of the service. You don't need to close the video. You don't need to do anything. It's just going to be black and soundless for a while, and then when this part of the service is over, we'll bring it back live. So just kids, God bless you as you head on down to your classrooms. Ushers, come collect our offerings as we give joyfully in response to God's gift of his Son.
And I have a heart full of questions, quieting all my suggestions. What is the meaning of Christian in this American life? I'm feeling awfully foolish, spending my life on a message. I look around and I wonder ever if I heard it right. I'm coming to you cause I'm confused, coming to you cause I feel used, coming to weep while I'm waiting. Tell me you won't make me go. And I need to know there is justice, that it will roll in abundance, and that you're building a city where we arrive as immigrants, and you call us citizens, you welcome us as children home. You were alone and rejected, misunderstood and detested. You gave it all, didn't hold back. You even gave up your life. How can we call ourselves Christians, saying that love is a tension between the call of the cross and between the old party lines? Coming to you for the mothers who are running for cover. Oh, there is a flood from their weeping. Tell me you won't make them go. I need to know there is justice, that it will roll in abundance, and that you're building a city where we arrive as immigrants, and you call us citizens, you welcome us as children home. There is a man with a family, he has a wife and a baby. He broke the law just to save them, working for $3 an hour. Truly you said we were equal. Everyone's heart is deceitful, and everyone born is illegal, when love is the law of the land. I'm coming to you for the hungry, eating the scraps of this country. Oh, didn't you swear you would feed them, and tell me you won't make them go? I need to know there is justice, that it will roll in abundance, and that you're building a city where we arrive as immigrants, and you call us citizens, and you welcome us as children home. There is a wolf who is ranting, all of the sheep they are clapping, promising power and protection, claiming the Christ who was killed by a common consensus. Oh, everyone's screaming Barabbas. They're trading their God for a hero and forfeiting heaven for all. I'm coming to you cause I'm angry. I'm coming to you cause I'm guilty. I'm coming to you cause you've promised to leave the flock for the one. And I need to know there is justice, and that it will roll in abundance, and that you're building a city where we arrive as immigrants, and you call us citizens, and you children home, where we arrive as immigrants. You call us citizens, and you welcome us as children home. Is there a way to love always, living in enemy hallways? Don't know my foes from my friends, and I don't know my friends anymore. Power is several prizes, handcuffs can come in all sizes. Oh, love has a million disguises, but winning is simply not one.
A reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, beginning in verse 18. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." The word of the Lord.
Well, good morning. So I don't know about you, but that passage is pretty familiar to me. I'm curious how many of you have either read it, memorized it, something like that. Show of hands. All right, good. It's what I assumed. These are the last words written in the Gospel of Matthew. The last words that Matthew places in the mouth of Jesus right before the book ends. And he does it on purpose. There's a reason for that. There's also a reason that Bill and I decided to talk about this passage. We're doing a mini kind of 2-week sermon series on this passage, which is known by the church at large as the Great Commission, or at least in the last so many years it's become known as that. So Matthew 28, 18 through 20. I'm going to talk about it this week, and Bill's going to talk about it next week. And we decided to do that for a couple reasons. One is, in case you hadn't noticed, last week was Easter, where Jesus, church calendar, Jesus rose from the dead. And after, these are the words that he gives his disciples, his followers. So we felt like it was appropriate, just chronologically. But we also felt like it was appropriate because, in a lot of ways, this is our mission. A lot of churches write different mission statements and come up with all sorts of very creative things. But ultimately, this is kind of the mission statement that Jesus gave to us. This is what it's all about. This is what we as Christ's body have been called to carry out. And so that's why we wanted to take a couple weeks just to kind of unpack this text. Maybe it's a reminder for many of you. Maybe you're already kind of getting comfortable and you're like, I kind of know everything about this passage already. Well, hopefully it will bring something new. But if not, it's just a good reminder. We need to be reminded sometimes of the basics, of what we're actually here for and what we're trying to accomplish, and what Jesus has called us into. So this morning, I'm going to just kind of unpack the text. It's pretty simple. We're going to go through the main thoughts of the text of where Jesus was teaching what he was saying, the way he lays it out, and then just a couple of thoughts at the end. And if you know me, this should not be a surprise, but I'll wrap it up with a story. So if you wonder where we're at in the sermon, that's how it's going to go. So Matthew 28, 18 through 20, Jesus gathers his disciples, his followers, and he gives them these words. And like I said, the gospel writers take different events in Jesus' life and they place them sometimes in different chronological order because ancient biographies did not really care about saying, well, day 1, day 2, day 3. That wasn't really the way they laid things out. An ancient biography was far more concerned with presenting the character of the person. And so they didn't care if the order wasn't right. What they cared about was that the character of the individual was explained. And if when a person read this story, they knew who this person was. That's what they cared about. So the order didn't matter. So it's interesting that that Matthew in particular places this as the very last words. He's making a point. And as we know, the final words of someone are often very important. And Jesus actually makes this point in the first statement that he says, because he comes to them and he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Now that is a pretty outrageous statement, if you just pause and think about it. Except for the fact that, as Bill reminded us last week, when Mary in the garden looked into the eyes of Jesus, she was looking into the face of someone who had faced death and conquered it. Just let that sink in for a minute. This is the Jesus who came, touched the lepers, raised Lazarus from the dead, took his disciples into Jerusalem, telling them that he was going to die and be murdered and killed and all of this. The one who went to the garden and sweat drops of blood and then said, not my will, but yours. The one who was betrayed by his closest friends, arrested, unjustly tried, faces off against Pontius Pilate and Herod and the high priest and the religious leaders, who is beaten and whipped and brought to a cross, whose body is literally destroyed, who is tortured and dies the most shameful, publicly humiliating death. And in all of that, Satan, who thought he won, does not win. And Jesus places his boot on the neck of the spiritual forces of evil and rises victorious. He looks death in the eye and he wins. And we're not here to repreach Easter, but I want you to realize that when Jesus says all authority has been given to me, this isn't an idle statement. This is a cosmic way of saying, listen up. I have something important to say. I am the king of this universe who conquered death, and you know it because you're standing in front of me, and you saw me dead. Listen up. What I'm going to say is going to matter. And so Jesus says, all authority is given to me. And then he goes on and he says this very familiar statement to many of us. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. All right, so how does this passage break down? Well, I like grammar. I know that might sound funny to you. If you're in school, you should learn your grammar. Grammar are like guidelines, they're guide rails, they like tell us how language works, okay? And they help us to understand. They really do. Not AI, grammar. And so grammar helps us to understand these things. You might have to actually think for yourself, with grammar. And with grammar, one of the things that's really important about this text is that there's only one main verb. Jesus actually only gives one command. And you might already know this. But the command that Jesus gives is he says, therefore, I want you to make disciples. That's the command, right? That's the mission that Jesus gives the church. It's really just one thing, right? And so Jesus looks at his followers and he says, I want you to make disciples. All the other stuff are in the grammar of the sentence are surrounding that statement, right? They help explain it. Maybe tell us how we go about this, right? But the main command is to make disciples. And so if you're going to make disciples, the implication is that you are therefore a disciple. Right, you have to be a disciple if you're going to make a disciple. And so what is a disciple? Well, a disciple is really simple. There are two Greek words that I think highlight the two ideas of discipleship. And we're not going to go into all the Greek, but the two words basically are someone who is a learner and someone who is a follower. And those are the two aspects of discipleship. Someone who learns and follows somebody else. That's it. So if you've ever learned from or followed anyone else, you have technically been their disciple. Sounds like a very Christian term, but it's not necessarily. It's just kind of the idea of apprenticeship, right? If you ever think of apprenticeship in the trades, maybe even a new job, you got connected with someone else. You were going to kind of shadow and see how they did things, and you're going to ask them questions, and you're going to learn from them. You're going to follow them around, right? That's a disciple. A disciple is just someone who learns and follows from another. It's an apprentice. And so our mission statement, our command from Jesus, the last thing he tells us, is that we are called, we are commissioned to make disciples. So we are to be learning and following from Jesus, and we're supposed to help other people learn and follow from Jesus. Well, how do we do this? I'm glad you asked, because Jesus tells us. And he tells us there are three, if you like your grammar, there are three participial adverbial phrases. Some of you just got shivers, I know. They're adverbial phrases, all the English nuts, right? And they basically define this verb. They tell us how we're supposed to actually make disciples. And so that's what we're going to look at. So there are three things he says. The first one comes first in the English, but the first one is go. Therefore, go and make disciples. Right? And so the phrase there is go, the word in English is go. The idea behind that word is as you are going. Right? And there's mistakes that we've made with this, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as you are going simply refers to the idea that we live in the world and we interact with friends and family and coworkers and community. It is really hard to make disciples if we just stayed within these four walls and never left. Right? Like just bluntly, like if we came to church, had a great time, and never left, we would never make disciples. It wouldn't happen. So Jesus says, you need to go. And he's talking to his followers in Jerusalem, and he wants them to go. And he's talking about different levels of going. I mean, we just heard from someone who really went. They went, they started going, they kept going, right? And they went all the way to the Middle East. And that's a long journey. So, we have people who do that. And unfortunately, what's happened is we've taken this passage, and this is the mistake we've made. We've taken this passage and we've interpreted the going as only referring to that. This is not a verse for missionaries, although it is. This is not a verse that is just about missionaries, maybe I should say. This is a verse that is given to Jesus' followers. That is all of us. So the going part is not a reference to going to a foreign country or going far, far away. It can also be a reference to the idea that you go out your front door and go to the grocery store, that you leave your home and go to work, or that you invite people into your home. As you are going, as I say in the slide, is just referring to how we live in the world. Jesus actually prays in John 17 for his disciples. And one of the interesting things that he says is, he asks God, he says, please do not take them out of the world. I want them to be in the world. Not of the world. I don't want them to be exactly like the world in their character, but they must be in the world. And I think we have certain, we kind of swing the pendulum on this sometimes. And some of you know I grew up in a very conservative kind of a bubble. All my friends, everything I knew, I went to a very conservative Christian church. I went to a very conservative Christian school. All of my friends were Christians. I was not in the world. I didn't know my neighbors. I didn't know anybody outside of my Christian bubble. That is not healthy. I'm just going to say that in case you're wondering. That is not good. That is actually disobeying Jesus. That is creating a safe space that is so safe that I now have no rubbing of shoulders or interactions with people outside of my world. I'm really safe, but I'm never actually interacting with people who don't think and act like I do, who might need to hear about Jesus. See, we have to get out of our safe spaces and we have to go. And we just have to live our lives and be a part of the world around us. So as you are going, so the first thing we do is, how do we make disciples? Well, we have to go, right? And I'll just say this, and I'll say more about this. That living our lives in the world around us, this is not a command to go and shoehorn awkward conversations about Jesus into every interaction you've ever had with anybody in your entire life. Okay, I just want to be clear about that. Yeah, I mean, I have seen some really embarrassing things. We all know someone, or we've been in places like this where, you're at the cash register and someone's, they're checking out your potatoes and someone's like, potato, that reminds me of the stone that was rolled in front of Jesus' tomb. Would you like me to tell you about Jesus right now? No, they need to cash you out and get to the next person and do their job. That is not the command. Okay, we'll talk about that more later. The command is just that as you live in the world, as you interact with the world around you, we are to bear witness to Jesus. So let's keep going. Did you get that? We're gonna keep going. Never mind. All right. Dad jokes. I thought they were funny. All right. As you are going, he says, go and make disciples. And the next thing he says is baptizing them. And this is where we all check out. And we're like, oh, good. Pastor Bill baptizes. I don't have to worry about that. And that's not for me, right? I've been to baptisms in college church. They're very informal. They're like a little blow-up pool over here or down there. And we dunk people under the water. And you guys don't have to worry about it, right? Well, not quite. What does baptism mean? Well, baptism... A couple of words I want you to kind of associate with baptism. Baptism has the idea of identifying or belonging, all right? And my favorite illustration of this is just, I think it's really fun. So Greek scholars who look at the word for baptize, baptizo, when they look at the word in the Greek outside of biblical literature, so extra biblical literature, so like outside of the Bible, where do we find this word? It helps us to define words, right? Like, okay, well, the Bible talks about it. How do other places talk about it? Well, the number one place that they find the word for baptize, and I love this, is in pickle recipes. So pickles are a really good fruit. I like pickles. So pickles, in the pickle recipe, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You take a cucumber, you create a brine, vinegar and seasonings and spices, and you baptize the cucumber. Now, it sounds funny to us, but they didn't laugh. Like, that was just like, that would be like if you read a recipe today and it was like, take the potatoes and immerse them in the water. That's baptize. That's the word baptize. That's all it means. But the funny thing about baptize is it's not just immerse, it also has to do with identifying. And I love the pickle recipe because it's so appropriate, right? If you take a cucumber, you know what a cucumber looks like. And once it is baptized, it stays there for a little bit, and it actually identifies with the vinegar and the seasonings and the spices, so much so that when you remove it later, it is different. I do not like cucumbers. I like pickles. Like, my kids love cucumbers. They're weird. They like vegetables. I don't like cucumbers. They're slimy and crispy at the same time. That's wrong. And pickles, but I know, right? But pickles, I don't know, they're slimy and crispy too, but they taste better. So pickles are better, but like that's just an amazing illustration. I love that illustration, right, of pickles, right? Like, it literally changes the cucumber into something else. And that's the picture of baptism. Baptism is the idea that when we are baptized in water, baptism, it identifies us. We identify with his death, his burial, his resurrection going under the water, and his resurrection coming out of the water. And it also places us into the identification with his body, which is the family of God, his people. So baptism is not just the act, not just the sacrament. Baptism is the concept of identifying and belonging to the family of God. So when we go into the world, how do we help people baptize? Well, baptism is accepting the invitation. Baptism is saying, I want to be a part of this family. I want to belong. That's what it has to do with. When we baptize people, that's what they're saying. They are publicly identifying with Jesus and his family. So when we go into the world to make disciples, he says, as you are going about your daily lives, you need to bear witness to Jesus. In some way, you bear witness to Jesus. And then we also baptize people, so that means that we are inviting them to actually be a part of this family. We're saying, hey, here's an invitation. And this is where the shoehorning Jesus into every conversation gets really obnoxious. We don't find Jesus doing that. What we find is this idea of invitation. And Jesus does this over and over and over again, and he's so good at it. He is constantly inviting his followers and strangers, constantly inviting them. And when they reject him, he doesn't belittle them. He doesn't make fun of them. He doesn't say, yeah, that's why you guys are smart. These guys are stupid. He doesn't do any of this. Do you know his reaction? It's like the rich young ruler, right? He tells the rich young ruler, there's a better way to live, but it's going to cost you something. And he invites him to give up all that he owns to live a better life. And when the rich young ruler walks away, do you guys know what Jesus feels? It tells us. He's sad. Jesus doesn't rant or post something about it or make a big deal about it. He's saddened. He had invited him into a better life, and he chose not to. And that's sad. But he doesn't say, well, I guess I got to craft a better message and persuade him better. No. There's no anxiety. There's no fear. There's no shame. Jesus doesn't say, well, I've got to get him into the kingdom or else. No. He invited him, and the rich young ruler refused. That's what you do. Because Jesus respects him enough to allow him to make that decision. He doesn't twist his arm to get him into the kingdom. And this is what we're called to do. See, and I think we've seen a lot of bad examples of this, and so we're really scared to invite people, but that's really what we're called to do. We're called to bear witness to Jesus and invite others into this. If you follow Jesus, I would assume that you would think that that life is a good life, that following Jesus is a good thing. And so you tell others about it, just like you tell other people about all sorts of things that you think are good things. That is what it means to bear witness. You don't have to have a presentation. You don't have to have a track. You don't have to have, well, first you were this, and then you were this, and let me give you a little thing where I'm going to get you to pray. That's not what bearing witness means. Bearing witness means that I am testifying about what Jesus has done in my life. It could be a big testimony, a big witnessing, big story, or it could be something small. Like, this happened to my kids, and I'm really thankful that God showed up. In Western Mass, half the audience turns and goes, "You believe in God?" Right? Just that statement. This happened to my kids, and God showed up, and I'm thankful for that. It's just little things, bearing witness to Jesus as we go about our life and inviting people so that they can one day say, yeah, I want to do that. I want to accept this. I want to become a part of the family of God. And then the last thing he says is teaching them to obey. He says, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And this is where I think that the American church in particular has gotten this wrong a little bit. Because there is not a distinction that I want to point out here between teaching and teaching them to obey. Jesus does not just say to teach. We have interpreted this phrase as meaning there's a whole lot of information about Jesus, and you need to know it. And once you know it, you're a disciple. That is not what Jesus says. Jesus does not say teaching them to know everything that I have commanded. He says teaching them to obey. There is a difference. Right? It's the difference between a Bible study and a spiritual practice. And once again, I want to be really clear, nothing wrong with Bible studies. We do need to know something. There does need to be information given. There do need to be Bible studies, and we do need to learn, right? But that is not the whole command. The command isn't just to give information. That's one of my struggles with most Bible studies. Most Bible studies, we come together, we open up the Bible, we walk away with some more information, we pat ourselves on the back, we say what good Christians we are, and we walk out the door. That's great, you got some information. That's not a bad thing, by the way. I know I'm kind of making light of that. That's not a bad thing. We need to learn that information. But that's not enough. And that's why you may have noticed in the last year or whatever, we've talked a lot about spiritual practices. That's why we're running a Rule of Life workshop, where you gather together and we actually talk about what's something you're going to do, and then what's something that someone else is going to hold you accountable to doing. This is what it means to teach them to obey. It's not just Bible knowledge, it's actually practicing the things that Jesus taught his disciples. Jesus taught them, Jesus sent them, Jesus had them go do things that he knew they were going to fail, and then they came back and they debriefed and they talked about it. Jesus did all of this. He taught them to obey, and that's what it means to make disciples. As you are going and living your life in the world, you are bearing witness to Jesus. You are inviting people into this life because you think it's a good life. And if you don't, well, you need to wrap your mind around that. Why don't you? Because you think it's a good life, and so you invite people into this good life, and then when they are interested, you teach them. You teach them to obey. You say, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like to follow Jesus, teaching and practicing the way of Jesus together. All right, so couple of thoughts about this. Clarifications. I just presented this in a very linear way. I don't know if you noticed that, just like 1, 2, 3, right? Just boom, boom, boom. That is not usually how this works. That is not how it worked in my life. I grew up in the nursery of a church. I do not remember not knowing about Jesus, right? I don't even remember how that all worked for me. Here's what I know. For me, the last step was probably the first one. I was taught from a little kid, this is what Jesus taught, this is how you should obey him. And then over time, as I obeyed Jesus and learned these practices, there came a point in my life, I do not know when exactly, I'll be honest. There came a point in my life where this thing clicked in my head and I thought, I guess I actually do believe this Jesus. I guess I actually am a Christian. But there was not this like first step of like, I'm going to live this awful, horrible life and then come into Jesus and then learn about Jesus. It wasn't like that for me. And for many of you, it's the same way. It's a mess. It's a mix. It's not linear. It's very messy. Jesus himself shows us this over and over again. He teaches his disciples to obey, and then as you're moving along, all of a sudden he'll say something, and it says his disciples, not the 12, but his disciples all left him. He does this over and over again. So they were starting to follow, and then something happens, and they leave. It is not linear even for Jesus. So this is not a straight line. It's messy. That's the first thing I want to say. Second, and this is really hard for us to wrap our minds around in America, this Great Commission is not for you and you and you and you. It is for us. And that blows our minds in America because we don't know what to do with that. Because we have always been taught in America that everything is for me. Whether that's a good thing or whether that's like a responsibility thing. It is up to me as an individual. I need to live my life. I need to bear witness to Jesus. I need to invite people in. And then I need to teach them to obey. And this is on me. And I do it all on my own. That is not what the Bible teaches, by the way. Jesus is not talking to an individual. He is pretty much never talking to individuals. It is the church family. So this is communal. This happens as a group. Some of you are going to be really good at certain parts of this, and other parts are going to be harder for you, and that's okay. Because there are others of you who are really good at the parts that you're bad at, right? Like, this is how this works. Some of you are really good at going into the world and just finding ways of like non-awkwardly, non-offensively bringing Jesus into the conversation. And people are like, wow, I've never thought about that. You're the first Christian I know who's not crazy. Like you're just really good at like breaking down those barriers, right? But like, it's not your commission to then carry them all the way through to the end of their life. Like, that's not how that works. You bring them into the church, and then guess what? Someone else walks alongside them, and they're really curious, and someone else says, oh, well, do you know how to pray? Would you like to learn how to pray better? And someone else teaches them how to pray, right? Like, it's communal. It's part of the family. We're part of a family. We do this together. This isn't all on me. This isn't all on you. And the last thing, kind of along those same lines, I hope you're feeling this, kind of the anxiety lifting, I hope. This cannot be motivated by anxiety or shame. It just can't be. Because it just does not bear good fruit. And I know for me growing up, that was how it was presented. If you do not share the gospel, bring this group of people who don't know Jesus into a relationship with Jesus, their life, their blood is on your hands because of your disobedience. And me as a 6-year-old, okay. Imagine the pressure and the shame and the guilt and the fear that is poured into these young lives who sit in our churches when we talk like that. Jesus never talks like this. I mentioned the rich young ruler. Think about how Jesus reacts to rejection. He never, ever seems like the burden of the world is put on him. He's obeying the Father. He's inviting people into this good life, and he is respecting them enough to allow them to make a decision. But it's their decision. Nothing wrong with persuasion, nothing wrong with answering questions, nothing wrong with being ready to have difficult conversations. That's all good. But it's an invitation. It's not us cramming something down someone's throat or forcing someone to follow Jesus. That is not going to work well. That's not what we're called to. Our motivation cannot be anxiety and shame. It has to be love. It's because, man, we have experienced something good and we want someone else to experience that too. So let me tell a story, and I'm just going to start this by telling you this is a very silly illustration, and it's kind of a silly story, okay, to illustrate this. I think it does illustrate it, but it is kind of silly. So I don't know about you guys, but Thanksgiving is a fun holiday in our house. And years and years and years ago, I decided that I think we should be done with turkey, because you spend all this work on the turkey, and like your goal is to get it to taste like chicken normally tastes. And I was like, there's so many other meats that are so good. I mean, pulled pork, ribs, steak tips, ribeyes. Like, if we're gonna spend a bunch of money on meat, like, why am I spending all this work on turkey, right? Turkey's dumb. And so I went to my wife, and I told her, I said, I think we should do with turkey. And of course, she's the traditionalist, and she's like, you can't celebrate Thanksgiving without a turkey. And so I said, okay, fine. I'll give it one more year, and I will put in, I'll actually take it seriously, because I did the turkey. And I thought, I'm gonna actually pull out all the stops and watch all the YouTube videos and do all the research, and there's different ways of cooking turkeys. And so I'm just gonna tell you right now, some of you have opinions, and I've discovered that. I wasn't gonna deep fry the turkey. I wasn't gonna do all that. I was like, no, I don't want to start a fire in my house. And so what I decided was that the best method was this brining method. And long story, but tried different methods. But basically, it's an overnight salt brine, but I've actually developed some cooler brines that are like apple cider and all sorts of spices, and it has like apple infusions, and it's really, really interesting. So we did it, and we had this turkey, and it was a lot of work. And the next day when we had Thanksgiving, the whole family was like, wow, this is like the best turkey we've ever had. Like, it actually tasted like chicken. It was actually juicy, and it was actually juicy, and you were like, oh, I would actually make a sandwich with this later, and it not be like stringy and tough. And so we did that, and everyone loved it, and the kids loved it, and they rave about my turkey, which I just follow a recipe. It's not that big a deal. And so they started to tell everybody else about our turkey. I really didn't pay them off or give them money or twist their arm. I didn't give them a lecture and say, your mission is to tell others about my turkey. They just were like, this was a really good turkey. And their friends at school were like, right. And they told them it was a good turkey. And they told their cousins that it was a good turkey. And so a couple years later, we had a big family gathering, and they said, hey, could Pierre make his turkey and bring it? So I did. And my brother-in-law, same age as me, he kind of likes to cook, had the turkey and was like, wow, this was really good. Tell me more about this. And so I told him all about the story and all the details, and he said, oh, that's awesome. And so the next year, he asked me for the recipe, so I shared the information, and I taught him how to make the turkey. And then the night before, he called me, and he said, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. What do you do again with the buckets and lining it, and you got to keep it the right temperature, and you don't want it to get too warm, And so I walked him through the whole process. That night, he called me probably 3 or 4 times, that night and the next day. And then they had Thanksgiving, and it turned out really good. And my nieces and nephews were like, hey, Uncle Pierre, that was the best turkey we ever had. And now they tell their friends about it. It's the gospel. I know, it was silly, but that's discipleship. But I mean, really, that's discipleship. We were just going about our lives, and we ran into something really good, and so we enjoyed it. And it just naturally came out of my kids to tell people, this was really good. And then we invited people to enjoy it too, because it's not just our turkey. Other people can make good turkey. And we invited them into it. And then my brother-in-law, Andrew, had tons of questions, and so I taught him. And I walked him through it, and we FaceTimed, and we did all that stuff. And yeah, it was kind of, it was a process. I was trying to make my turkey. And so I'm trying to help him. And so we got through this whole thing. And guess what? When it was all done, they knew how to do it too. And they went and told their friends about it. And And folks, like, that's just evangelism. That's what it means to make disciples. And we've made it so complicated and so confusing. And we're so scared to death to tell people about a good thing in our life. And that's all we're being asked to do, is bear witness as we go about our lives, inviting people into the good life that we've been experiencing with Jesus, and then helping them to develop practices, to obey the things that Jesus commands, holding people accountable. And so there's all of that, and that's what it is. That's what the Great Commission is about, is making disciples. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the chance that we have just to come before you and to think about these things. Father, help us to go. Help us to baptize. Help us to teach others to obey. Father, help us in our own lives to be better disciples so that we can share what we have learned with others and they can share it with others, and on and on. Thank you for this in your name. Amen.
Why don't y'all stand up and join us as we sing one more song? In the darkness we were waiting, without hope and without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes.
You know, Pierre, you can disciple people on how to make ribs just as easily. And then afterwards, you get to eat ribs. So, we are stewards of the gospel, which is good news. It's not good advice. It's not helpful suggestions. It's not strong-arming people. It's good news. I think of Eugene Peterson, who said that the early church, they shared the gospel like it was gossip over the backyard fence. It's like, are we electrified by the joy of the gospel? If so, it'll be the most natural thing in the world to talk about the difference that Jesus has made in our lives. Well, we invite you to linger longer. There are refreshments in the glass house. I know Peter and Rachel would love to connect with you at their table in the back. Paul's at the foot of the cross, and I think someone else is on their way, and they'd love to pray with you, wrap their arms around you, and remind you that God knows you, He loves you, He wants good things for you, and we can trust Him, walk into His presence. Let's go with these good words. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen and amen. Go in peace.